Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the NRW. I'm your host, Rob Medina, and I thank you all very much for joining me here today because today I'm going to be reviewing the movie The Flood. Now, this is actually the second Brandon Slagle film. The first, which that came out this year, was Breakout, and Brandon Slagle had directed this movie as well as Breakout. And then last year, he directed, in my opinion, that's I believe is still his best movie, and Battle for Saipan, which is a film that I highly recommend you all check out here, along with this movie as well too. But one of the reasons why I was really excited for The Flood is because I had some insight about what it took to make this film, and I was quite impressed in hearing that they shot this movie all in Thailand, and this movie takes place in America, in Louisiana to be more specific, which I thought was quite interesting considering that they're shooting in a different country with an entirely different climate, and in a country, in a state here in the United States that's nothing like Thailand. So I was really curious to see how they're going to pull that off here to make it feel like that the movie takes place in America. I will say that I was quite impressed with what I got with this movie here, but I will also point out too that as much as I did enjoy the film, this isn't my favorite Brandon Slagle movie here. That title still goes to Battle for Saipan, which is a film I still highly recommend for everyone to check out. It is really worth your time, especially if you're a big lover of the action genre like myself. That movie, I think, will definitely entertain you here. But this movie, on the other hand, though, does have a lot of great qualities about it as well too, because this is basically a more or less kind of like a monster flick. It deals with alligators, of course, but it's just a fun movie that you just go in and have a good time with it. There's really nothing complicated about it at all. It's just pretty much a straightforward story where the good guys are the good guys and the bad guys are the bad guys, with a little mystery along the way that you start to discover along the way too, that will keep you invested with the overall story, which I will get into a little bit here. But I will also point out too that I will not be getting into any spoilers here at all, because the movie has not been released as of yet, because this movie will be coming out this week on July 14th in select cinema and also on VOD. So I do recommend you guys do check out this film when it drops this week on July 14th. So again, I'll get into the plot synopsis, no spoilers, then I'll get into my positives, my negatives, and then my rating. After a massive hurricane floods Louisiana, it unleashes a threat deadlier than a rising water level, a relentless horde of giant hungry alligators. When a group of in-transit prisoners and their security guards seek shelter in a local prison, they become prey to the flesh-eating attackers. To survive, the prisoners and the guard must fight together in this action thriller packed with slithery scares and jaw-clenching suspense. And that right there is the film in a nutshell. So now let's get into my positives. My first positive with this movie actually has to do with the fact that, as I mentioned before, this movie was shot entirely in Thailand. And when I had learned from Brandon Slagle, the director of this movie, some of the behind-the-scene info that he was able to share with me, what it took to make this movie, I was quite impressed in hearing the hard work that it went to making this film, because this movie was not easy to shoot at all, from what he had explained here to me. But there was a part of me that was slightly concerned about the fact that this movie was shot in Thailand, that how they're going to be able to pull off a film that's supposed to take place entirely in the United States, although it was never shot in the United States at all, specifically in a country that does not look like the United States whatsoever. So there was a little concern for me when it came to that. And I thought at one point that maybe a lot of it had to be shot in close quarters, where you have to shoot it, straight, forward here, and then cut from this angle there to avoid the backdrop, even though you can easily hide that with CGI. But something about that just seemed a little off-putting for me, where I thought, can they actually pull that off here? And I should know better, because there's a lot of films that have been shot in various different countries around the world that are set in America, or let alone in other countries that are supposed to be taking place in other countries as well too. So it's not a very uncommon practice. It's very common to hear that, but it's just due to the fact that it's shot in Thailand, set in America, but Thailand does not have an America backdrop to it at all whatsoever. So there was a slight hesitation when it came to that here. But when I saw the movie, I was quite impressed that when I saw the film, not once did I ever thought, oh, I can see Thailand back there somewhere. No, it was just, it had this really a seamless transition when it came to from one scene to the next. Everything flowed together. There was no hints of Thailand, from what I can gather here, that made me forget that this movie took place in America. So I did appreciate the hard work that came into that here, because as soon as I got past more or less the 5 minutes of the movie, I was really just invested with the film at that point, because at that point I completely forgot that they had shot this movie all entirely. In fact, remember, I saw the movie with my wife and I told her that, and she was quite impressed when having learned that after she had seen the movie with me. Now, the other thing I also want to point out here too is that Brandon Slagle is a director that I've become a big fan of here now, really ever since I saw the movie Battle for Saipan, which came out last year. And that movie, in my opinion, I think is still his best film. Now, I also mentioned before in the review for Battle for Saipan that I had seen a movie well before I had learned who Brendan Slagle was, kind of by chance because of Louis Manlow, who happened to be in that movie called Escape from Ensenada, where I remember when I first saw the film, I really didn't like the movie all that much. I didn't like the way how the scenes were cut together, how certain shots were handled. I just had a lot of problems with the technical sides of the film. There was a good story, but just issues with the technical side of the movie when it came to the editing and among other things as well too. And then having seen Battle for Saipan, it was a clear difference in terms of his directing skills that you could see from that movie in Battle for Saipan. And having seen The Flood now, to me personally, this looks like to be one of his best looking films when it comes to certain scenes in the movie where certain shots were handled quite beautifully. And the cinematography in this movie was handled beautifully as well too, and various sequences that I've come across in this movie. And there's a reason why I say various sequences, because there were some issues that I had when it came to how certain shots look phenomenal, and then boom, right in the next shot, it didn't have the same consistency to it when it came to the look of the film. But a lot of it had to do with more or less the CGI aspect of it as well. But the overall look in the movie, in this film, The Flood, I think that Brandon has done a really good job in directing a beautiful looking film that definitely sets the tone when it comes to the more or less the build up to the alligators, meant to say, that are coming after the people in the facility. So there is definitely a wonderful build up to that, and you have a great atmosphere as well too that more or less fits in line with what the story is all about here. But at the same time, as I said before, it just looked like a beautiful movie, in my opinion, that I think that Brandon, if people take the time out of the day to focus on that as well too, they can really see that Brandon Slagle has gotten a lot better when it comes to directing. So the upcoming project that he's going to be working on down the line, I have nothing but high hopes when it comes to what he's going to be doing with these upcoming projects that he's going to be working on real soon, that I am super excited for, because having come across Battle for Saipan, Breakout, and then this movie, there's a clear graduation of the skill level that has gotten better and better with his directing skills that you definitely do see in this movie, that I think he's done a great job, and not just making the film look great, but also have the proper atmosphere as well too, bringing the right people to help fulfill that vision, if you will, that gives it that sense of urgency, that sense of tension, that sense of action, and all that wonderful stuff that makes this movie quite entertaining, in my opinion. Now, I will also want to point out too that Louis Manlow is, again, one of my favorite actors of all time, who's also in this movie as well too. Without revealing too much about his character, because I'd rather kind of leave that left for you guys to see as when you guys watch the movie, which I do highly recommend you guys do so. But Louis Manlow is one of those actors that no matter what he does, he's going to deliver 100%, and he definitely does that in this movie as well. But the one thing about his character that I also did appreciate with this movie is that although he's in the movie for a good bit for one part of the film, and then you don't see him for quite some time, and then he shows up at a later part of the movie too, when he does make his presence in the movie, in my opinion, I actually think he made the film a little bit better when it came to the levity of the character's story that we're following here, because without really revealing as far as why he's in the film and his relationship with Casper Van Dien's character in this movie, that actually for me was one of the better part of the stories, where I actually was much more invested in understanding what was really going on, because the crocodiles the alligators, they're actually more like a backdrop, if that makes any sense. I mean, they definitely are more or less the key in making it a fun, more or less like a monster flick, but they really are not the main focus of the movie here. They're just there to kind of what's the best way I could describe it? They serve a good purpose for the entertainment value of the story, but the real story is about the characters, about what the reasons for why everyone's going to this jail facility, and Casper Van Dien's involvement, and including everyone else surrounding that as well too. That's really the cream of the crop of the story, and Louis Manlow is a major key figure with that I thought when his involvement, when it was added to the story, for me, made the story that much better. And I also got to give a lot of props to Casper Van Dien. Casper Van Dien, you watch a movie like Battle for Saipan, like you really get to see that this guy's a phenomenal actor, and he's a really good when it comes to the action sequences that do occur in this movie as well as he did in Battle for Saipan. Like, if you learned what they had to go through making that film, there's one particular action sequence that they shot in 2 hours that lasted for like a couple minutes in the final cut of the film. It's mind-blowing that how they were able to pull that off here in such a short span of time. And there's no doubt in my mind that's more or less the same thing they had to go through here too when it comes to the limited time and resources they have to pull off here. But everyone, in my opinion, specific with Casper Van Dien, I think he's one of those actors that deserves a lot more work. And I'm not saying he needs to be more famous. I don't care about that. I really care about like showcasing what he can really do. Not necessarily just at the highest level, but just the opportunities to showcase what he can really do, showing ranges here. Because when you look at Battle for Saipan and also this movie as well, this guy can really act. I mean, I'm talking about really, really act. And even though this movie is meant to be just like a popcorn feature, but there is some grounded performances that you get from these actors here, Louis Mandylor, Casper Van Dien, and various other people in this movie as well, that they do deliver some strong performances when it comes to their interaction with each other, and they provide some weight behind the character and the overall story that we're following here. So I got to give a lot of props to both Louis and Casper for the performance they provided in this movie as well. One other actor I want to point out here, it has to do with Nikki Whelan, and she is the sheriff in this movie, the one that's in charge of the jail facility in which all the prisoners are having to make this emergency stop at. I actually liked her character quite a bit, and the reasons for why I liked her character is because there are clear moments where you see that the character is looked at as a more or less kind of a sex object by the other prisoners, because there's no doubt she's a very attractive woman, but the part that I appreciated the most about her character is that wasn't the focus on her. She was just doing her thing, and there is a respect value that comes with her character that all the other, in this case, her co-workers, do showcase for her. So you can clearly tell that this is someone that knows how to handle her shit and knows what needs to be done to get the job done. So it's something that I did appreciate about her character. So there's no... I don't want to point this out as like as a stereotypical thing, but it's not a damsel in distress type of situation with her. She really is someone that knows how to get her shit done and can look out for herself, and is also able to figure out what needs to be done to find a resolution to the overall problem that they're dealing with here. And again, we're just dealing with her way of handling things here, and it makes a lot of sense for the overall story. So her character does not lag the story or push or hold back the story, if that makes any sense. So I think that with her involvement, her character being involved with this overall story does add value with having to find some sort of, what's the best way I could describe it? There is a new set of motivation for Casper Van Dien's character involving her. Not that it's a loving relationship at all. It's not. They're not forming a romantic relationship by any means. Actually, there's no hints of that at all whatsoever. It really is just two people working together, doing their thing, and finding a way to survive. That's really what it's all about at the end of the day. But I just love the fact that how she was able to just do her thing, and we are focusing only on that. So I got to give a lot of props to her when it comes to that as well. Now, when it comes to the overall entertainment value of this film, this movie does have that for me personally. Now, again, I will say though that this is not my favorite Brandon Slagle movie. There are some things about this film that I will get into my negatives here that I did have issues with here. But at the end of the day, I still walked away being quite entertained with this movie, because there are some funny bits in this film. There are some great action beats in this movie as well. But there's also just a great set of characters and a great story that I was still invested in from start to finish. And a lot of it does have to do with the co-writer of this movie, in Chad Law, who is someone that I'm a major fan of here. Anything that Chad's name's attached to, I'm always going to look forward to checking it out, because I am a massive fan with what he's been able to do, especially when it comes to the action genre. But for me, this is one of the few times that I can recall that he's done a film that isn't necessarily all action, even though it does have some action elements in the movie. So that's to be expected here. But the film is not it's not really an action film. It is more or less like a monster flick at the end of the day. And I think that Chad did a really good job in having that entertainment value with this movie and just making it a fun film and having some funny dialogues as well too, some funny characters, and overall just a great story at the end of the day. So for me, that's going to be in my positives. Now let's get into my negatives. So for my first negative, I just want to preface here that even though I'm pointing out these negatives, this does not mean that I did not like the film. I still enjoyed the movie. And as I said before, this is not my favorite Brandon Slagle film. There's a lot of great qualities this movie does have that I still thoroughly enjoy. But I started to realize, like, halfway through the film, there was a lot of issues that I had with the movie that I'm not going to say that the negatives outweigh the positives. It's not that at all. It's more about, so for example, the Gators in this movie, although they have their moments in the film, but they're not the highlight of the movie at all whatsoever. They're not really the focus of it. I mean, they are an issue, they are a problem, they have to be dealt with here, but that's not the best part of the movie at all. And although they do have some pretty cool kills here and there, but again, that's not really the things that I remember the most about the movie. What I remember the most about the film, apart from the technical aspects of the movie that I really did appreciate how they were able to put the film together, it's really about the reason for why there's a break-in in this jail facility to try to get Casper Van Dien's character, without spoiling anything at all about what the reason is for, but it definitely does involve Louis Mandelow's character and his crew. That was the real story for me, and you do find that out as the story progresses along the way. It becomes a reveal where, when you find out what the whole story is all about, there's a humanity that that with that revelation that you get, that really brings the story more or less in a grounded level. That I think, if that was the idea for the initial start of the film, I think the movie could have been a lot better, in my opinion. Again, that's not to take away that the movie didn't have any enjoyment factors. It definitely did, but I enjoyed that part of the story a lot more, and I wish that probably would have been the focus on it from the very beginning, and then having learned along the way with certain reveals with their connection with the characters, that probably would have been just as great too. But when we learned about what was really going on between Louis and Casper's character, I remember thinking, like, that should have been the movie right there from the very beginning. But again, that's not to take away that the Gators didn't have any great moments. They definitely did, but they weren't the best ones for me personally. The other thing I also want to point out too, when it comes to the negatives, again, when I point this out, I don't want to give the impression that everyone that worked in this movie didn't do a good job, because they definitely did a good job, because making movies is not easy at all, and I am not a filmmaker at all, so I don't want to give the impression that I know better, because I don't. But what I'm trying to imply here is that the issues that I had with the movie, as I mentioned before in my positives, that there are some beautiful shots that we get under the direction of Brandon Slagle and the cinematographer as well, that just look phenomenal, and you get to see like some really powerful performances by Casper and Louis's character as well, where you get to see like the humanity behind their performances in a film that's meant to be a popcorn movie. And then you have these beautiful shots, and then all of a sudden the Gators are coming in, and the CGI, the way that the lighting works in certain shots here, it transitions from a beautiful looking scene to that shot, and it just kind of took me out of the film, where the transition didn't work out as well. Again, you could definitely put in the mindset that it's just a fun little popcorn movie. That's fine. I get all that. I'm believe me, I'm all for that as well too. At the end of the day, because there was a certain imbalance in this movie that I took away from. I loved what I saw when it came to the human interaction, and then the Gators kind of come in and kind of took me out of the film to some degree. But then it makes up for it in some areas where it just, there was a fun element to it that I did appreciate. It's just that inconsistency sort of took me out of the film, that I wish that you can just pick one particular story over the other, and I would have just rather focus on the purpose of the breaking of this jail facility and remove the Gators altogether. Because if there's one sacrifice you had to make, I would prefer to make the Gators as a sacrifice, remove them altogether, and let that be the focus of the story here. So those are really my major negatives with this movie. Something else I think that sticks out here to me, some of the sound editing at certain points didn't work for me all that well. But apart from that, though, that's really the only thing that I can think of here. So for me, that's gonna be into my negatives. Now let's get into my rating. Overall, I did enjoy this movie. I really had a good time with the film. Now, again, this is not my favorite Brandon Slagle movie, but that doesn't mean that I did not have a great time with this movie. I will go back and revisit this film, I have to say, and I will go out of my way to rent this movie too when it comes out this week on July 14th. As I mentioned before, this movie will be coming out also in select cinemas as well as VOD. So for me, even though I had some issues with the film, the enjoyment factor was still there for me, that it's enough for me to be and to have the incentive to go back and revisit it again, because there are some things that I'm noticing along the way when it comes to Brandon Slagle as a director, as a storyteller, and also as Chad Law as a screenwriter, and also as a storyteller as well too, that are just, their DNA is written all over that. So seeing that progressions throughout their careers as far as what they've been able to do from when they first had started, at least from the things that I've come across here from when they first started up to this point right now, you can clearly see a graduation as far as like the chances they're taking on trying something slightly different, trying something new more or less, and make it a fun film at the end of the day with each and every project they work on here. So this movie is no different when it comes to, because the enjoyment factor is still there. I know this is not going to be filmed for everybody, and I get that, but if you are just looking to have a fun movie to watch with a lot of popcorn entertainment, this movie does offer that in space, in my opinion. Hopefully you guys will enjoy and check it out, because for me, this movie is definitely a raise the glass. And those are my thoughts on the film. Now, if you have seen this movie, let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. And as I've already mentioned before, this movie will be released on in select theaters and also on VOD on July 14th. And I'll also make sure I have the link in the description down below where you guys can pre-order the film for you guys to check out. If you're into the monster genre, I think there's going to be something you get out of this film that will offer a great entertainment value behind it because, as I said before, I know this movie's not going to be for everybody there, but I highly urge you guys to go out of your way to check this film out and show some love to this cast and crew because they definitely put in the hard work into making this movie because making films is not easy at all. And I really do believe that putting the time and effort here will give these guys more of an opportunity for them to try bigger and better things that, from what you can see what they were able to do with this movie, imagine what they can do in a much larger scale if given the opportunity to do so here. So I highly urge you guys go out of your way to check this movie out and give these guys support by spending your money on whether you rent it or buy it, but put your money down and make sure you spend your money on this film because I think it's gonna be worth your time. And if you haven't done so already, make sure you also subscribe to the channel, make sure you share, like a video, hit the notification while you're down there as well too. And also follow NRW on social media, on Instagram, New Release Wednesdays, on Facebook, Nerds Rule the World, and on Twitter at the NRW. And you can follow me on my social media accounts on Instagram, You're So Cool with Rob Medina, on Twitter, You're So Cool with WRM, and also on Facebook, simply just Rob Medina. And also be on the lookout for my 100th episode this week here on the NRW for my show, You're So Cool with Rob Medina, with one of my favorite people to ever talk to on my show, in Natalia Hawthorne, who's actually my 50th guest on my show and is now my 100th guest here. So I thought it'd be a fitting place for me to have her on my show as my 100th guest because I love my first conversation with her, and it was a long episode. It was like 4 hours long, and then this one, it's a little short by 1 hour, so it's about a 3 hour long conversation that we delve into a lot here with her and myself, and I think you guys will get a kick out of it. So I hope you guys do check out the episode when it drops this week on Friday here on the NRW, so make sure you gotta be on the lookout for that. But otherwise, I hope you guys enjoy this review, and until next time, stay safe out there, and cheers.